Let's take a look at how much your investment would be worth if you would have started to invest in your 20s instead of in your 30s. If you can invest $100 each month for 30 years with a 10% return, your investment would be worth around $214,000. However, if you're able to invest 10 years earlier, which would mean that you would have started in your 20s instead of in your 30s, your investment would be worth $584,000, which is more than double for the same amount invested with those only 10 additional years. Let's take another look. So let's say you can invest only $50 per month in your 20s until you're 30 years old. So after 10 years of investing, you would end up at 30 years old with $10,159. So if you take this money and then you invest it again, and then you are able to add $500 each month instead of 50, your end game would be at $1.25 million after another 30 years after a total of 40 years of investing. If you were to invest $500 each month and start with $0 instead of the $10,000 you would have gotten by investing in your 20s, instead of finishing with $1.25 million, you would only have $1.07 million, which is about 25% less than the investment you could have gotten. Let's look at a real-world example. So if you invested in the S&P 500 in 1984 with $100 each month, so that would mean that you would have invested for 40 years, you would have ended up with $754,000. If instead of investing in 1984, you started 10 years later in 1994 with the same amount invested, you would end up with $233,000 instead of the $754,000, which is about 3 times less. Let's take a look at another scenario in which from your 20s you would have invested $100 each month, so from 1984 to 1994 you would have ended up with $24,000, and if you can invest those $24,000 and keep adding $500 each month from 1994, from when you're 30 years old to today, you would end up with $1.6 million. If you did not have this initial sum that you would have accumulated in your 20s, then if you start at the same time with the same cash flow, you would end up with only $1.1 million, which is around 44% less than the amount you would have gotten here. Keep in mind that those results do not consider inflation, but still they print the picture that tells that you should invest as early as possible and with as much money as possible in order to end up as wealthy as you can be. Hey, so that will be all. Thank you very much.